Hello, you're watching Shalom World News. I'm Dana Villa from Chicago, Illinois. Here are the latest headlines from around the world. More Israeli hostages and Palestinians set to be freed as Israel-Hamas truce extended by 2 days. Tuesday, November 28th, marked the start of the fifth day of an Israel-Hamas truce in the Gaza Strip, during which some Israeli hostages and Palestinians were released as the pause in fighting was extended by 2 days. Israel announced on Monday that 11 Israelis had returned from the Gaza Strip. According to Israeli figures, Hamas has freed 69 of the 240 hostages it took during an incursion into the southern Israel on October 7 that killed about 1,200 people. Of the 69 hostages freed by Hamas, 51 were Israelis and 18 were foreigners. 150 Palestinians have been released since Friday, according to the Israel Prison Service. On Monday, November 27, 33 inmates were released from Israel's Offer jail in the occupied West Bank and a detention center in Jerusalem. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called the extension a, quote, glimpse of hope and humanity, end quote, but added that 2 extra days would not be sufficient to meet Gaza's relief needs. The Holy See Press Office announced on Monday, November 27, that the Pope is in good and stable condition. He has no fever and his respiratory situation is improving. Matteo Bruni, the director of the Holy See Press Office, confirmed that his CT scan ruled out pneumonia but showed pulmonary inflammation that caused some breathing difficulties. From the chapel of his residence at Casa Santa Marta, the Holy Father appeared via video link for Sunday's Angelus address. Pope Francis also met with the president of Paraguay, Santiago Peña, on Monday morning. However, he has postponed several of his other appointments this week. The 87-year-old pontiff said he still plans to go to Dubai the following weekend to speak at the United Nations COP28 Climate Summit. The Holy Father will visit the United Arab Emirates from December 1st through the 3rd. New research released this month reveals that at least 30,000 babies that would have been otherwise aborted have been born since the Supreme Court reversed Roe v. Wade in June 2022. The study conducted by the Institute of Labor Economics showed that 32,000 babies were born in states that enacted some form of abortion restriction. Research indicates that in the first 6 months of 2023, births rose by an average of 2.3% in states enforcing total abortion bans compared to states where abortion rights remained protected. Currently, 14 states have been banned abortion, which has helped save unborn babies. Kristen Hawkins, the president of Students for Life of America, said the research indicated a, quote, triumph that pro-life policies result in lives saved, end quote. At least 76 people have been killed and 40,000 displaced from their homes due to floods in Kenya. Houses, roads, bridges were washed away in the floods caused by the rains, which began pounding in the African nation in October. Government officials have called for Kenyans residing at low elevations to evacuate and relocate to higher ground as heavy rains and flash floods continue to wreak havoc across East Africa. On Monday, November 27, President William Ruto called an emergency cabinet meeting and announced that the El Niño phenomenon has made floods and mudslides worse in 38 of Kenya's 47 counties. The coastal cities of Mombasa and Malinda are the worst hit. Kenya's meteorological department has warned that the heavy rains will continue into the new year. In neighboring Somalia, the death toll from the deluge stood at 96 on Monday, November 27. In the U.S. state of Tennessee, Governor Bill Lee is set to propose legislation establishing a new statewide education savings account, or ESA, program to provide funding for students attending private or home schools of their choice in 2024-2025. 20,000 students would receive $7,075 in state funding under the proposed law, and the Republican governor plans to offer school vouchers to all 95 Tennessee counties starting 2025. Lee's proposed Education Freedom Scholarship Act states half of the funding will be available to students whose families' incomes are below 300% of the federal poverty level, students with disabilities, and those who meet eligibility requirements for the existing ESA pilot program. The remaining will be made available to any student currently entitled to attend a Tennessee public school. Several states, such as Arkansas, Arizona, Iowa, West Virginia, and Utah, have all recently adopted such policies. Pope Francis sent blessed rosaries to the newly elected Argentinian President Javier Milei and Vice President-elect Victoria Villarroel. Javier Milei's office reported this through its X, formerly Twitter account. The gift follows the telephone conversation with Javier Milei last week when the pontiff congratulated him and advised him to have courage and wisdom for his new responsibility. In return, Pope Francis was extended an invitation by Javier Milei to visit Argentina next year. The new president will take office on December 10th. Amber Jade Sanderson, Western Australia's health minister, said a review of Western Australia's euthanasia laws has ruled out altering eligibility rules. She said the review of the Voluntary Assisted Dying Act, which has been operating for 2 years, was never intended to consider changes to eligibility, added that the issue of informed consent was central to the original decision to exclude dementia. The legislators who drafted the laws, along with medical experts, felt that an individual who had lost mental capacity could not be regarded as a willing or conscious candidate, even if they had stated their intentions when they were mentally competent. An estimated 400,000 Australians are affected by dementia, and by 2058, this figure is predicted to be doubled. A Christian school in the U.S. state of Vermont is suing the state's education authorities after the school was prohibited from taking part in all state sports leagues due to its transgender policies. Mid-Vermont Christian School from the town of Quechee was banned from participating in the sports league earlier this year after its girls basketball team refused to participate in a playoff game against Long Trail School because the team's roster included a biological male who identifies as a girl. Mid-Vermont Christian forfeited the game due to the concerns about fairness and safety, according to school authorities. Christian legal advocacy group, the Alliance Defending Freedom, filed a federal complaint last week claiming that the state had disqualified the students from state competitions and a state tuition scheme due to their religious convictions. The lawsuit claims the restriction violated the school's First Amendment rights. A legislative initiative to legalize euthanasia nationwide has been met with opposition from the Catholic Church in Mexico, which argues that euthanasia is always an attack against a person's dignity. The church said taking the life of another person is not an act of compassion, but a gesture of abandonment. Monsignor Jesus Jose Herrera Quiñones, head of the Episcopal Dimension of Life of the Mexican Bishops Conference, issued a statement urging decision makers in the public authorities to direct their efforts to put palliative means in place to address the pain of the deceased without ever directly taking the life of a human being, whether they request it or not. A statement published on the non-governmental organization Media Foundation for West Africa's website reveals that Burkina Faso's military government is enacting laws and policies that drastically restrict the freedom of expression in the country. On November 21st of this year, the Burkina Faso military government passed a new law that gives the president the authority to select the head of the nation's media regulating agency. The move has been extensively criticized as a threat to the media's independence and the safety of journalists working in the war-torn West African nation. The NGO stated the provisions of the new law gives the government powerful tools to further influence the media landscape and restrict freedom of expression in Burkina Faso. The group called for constructive dialogue between the government and media stakeholders on the issue. As the season of Advent and Christmas approaches, the Catholic Church offers its faithful an opportunity to deepen their spiritual experience. Starting December 8th and continuing until February 2nd, a plenary indulgence is being granted to those who pray before a nativity scene located in a Franciscan church. The Conference of the Franciscan Family requested permission from Pope Francis to grant this plenary indulgence as part of the commemoration of the Franciscan Centenary, which was celebrated earlier this year. Pope Francis will visit Verona on May 18 next year for the 14th Festival of the Social Doctrine of the Church. The pontiff's visit coincides with the 1650th death anniversary of Saint Zeno of Verona, a local bishop of the 4th century and the city's patron saint. During his visit, the Pope will lead Mass for the faithful at the Bentegodi Stadium, visit Montorio Prison, and participate in the Peace Arena 2024 event. Bishop Domenica Pompili of the Verona Diocese stated that Pope Francis sees the Italian city as a place of dialogue and exchange that would contribute to the peace in these challenging times. This announcement was made during a press conference held during the 13th Festival of Social Doctrine, which concluded on Sunday, November 26. And those are your latest headlines. Do join us tomorrow. In the meantime, you can visit swnews.org for more updates. Shalom.